is 6:30. We'll call the meeting to order. We'll start with the budget.
United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can we start with a roll call, please?
Mr. Hazelhurst?
Here.
Mr. Haverly? Mr. Kinzer?
Here.
Mrs. Maxey?
Here.
Mr. Moon?
Here.
Mr. Mulholland?
This meeting, we will start, before we approve the agenda, with a public hearing on the 2018 tax levy. Oh, did I forget?
That's okay.
Oh, sorry.
You could
I'm here
catch.
too.
So we'll start this with a public hearing on the 2018 tax levy. At this time, we'll open the hearing, and at this time, anyone, including the board, audience members, if you have any questions or wish to speak towards the tax levy, feel free to. At this time, we have our business manager here. Is there any questions on the tax levy? Board members? We'll have a time later to discuss it as well. Then at that, we will close it, the public hearing then, and move on to the approval of the agenda. I did have a request from Joe, who is going to be late tonight, that he had asked to talk about if we could move the long-term technology plan to later in the agenda. And my only thinking on that is I thought we could only move it to the end of unfinished business. But since that's an informational item, if the rest of the board's in agreement, we could just hold discussion on it, and then we can discuss it even after executive session. Since it's an informational item, we could have it then. Who's presenting?
I get it.
You're doing the,
Melissa and I are presenting that, so that's not
You'll be
an issue.
so if that's okay, we won't move it in the agenda, but we'll just plan on discussing it at the end of the meeting.
And you want the presentation at the end too?
Joe hasn't seen the presentation, so.
I know, so I think that's kind of what he wants, is to see
Yeah.
the presentation too, so
So that's fine with me.
if you guys are okay with that?
Okay.
I need a motion on that thing.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as modified.
Second.
Do we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Hazelhurst?
Yes.
Mr. Kinzer?
Yes.
Mrs. Maxey?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mr. Wheeler?
Yes.
That moves us to the audience and visitors. And then that takes us to the treasurer's report.
It's as presented. Mark Olson, the treasurer, has not signed that copy yet, but I will get that to you guys for next meeting. But it's as presented.
When did you say it was going to be signed?
He has it. He just hasn't signed it yet. So as soon as we get that, I'll send it to you guys.
Any questions on that? Then that takes us to the superintendent's report.
Yep, and we'll start off first with our middle school group and Mrs. Bowman. She is here with some of our students that have been doing projects on Indigenous people. And I had the privilege of seeing 3 of these groups of students work, and they did a fabulous, outstanding job, and we invited them here tonight to talk to us and give one of the presentations that we had given to us at the middle school to present to the board. So at this point, I'll turn it over to you, Mrs. Bowman, and Mr. Pierce. I think you wanted to welcome them and
Yeah, I
introduce.
just, real quick, that this is a project that's about 2 years in the making. I know Mrs. Bowman for the last couple of years has been excited about this and really wanted to get rolling with this, so I'm pretty impressed that we're here tonight finally to present this to the board. So to the students, I was able to hear 5 of them. They did a phenomenal job. Even the students that weren't selected to come on to this event tonight. I'm just very proud of what they put together. I think you guys will enjoy this presentation. So, Mrs. Bowman, take it away.
Hello.
Hello.
I wanted to begin by saying thank you to Dr. Greenlee and Mr. Pierce for being such supportive administrators. Are we good? And open to the crazy ideas that tend to come from my social studies classroom. I also want to say thank you to the amazing parents who have shown up to witness your kids make history. And then I wanted to say thank you to my unbelievably awesome students who are standing here before you tonight. These are some of the most dedicated and creative students that I have ever had the pleasure of teaching. And I want to thank you guys for sharing your ideas and your passion for wanting to change the world with me. And I hope that as much as I have inspired you, hopefully, you guys inspire me so much more. So these students, like Mr. Pierce said, have been working since this October to continue a project since last year. I kind of followed them up to 8th grade. They didn't have an option. To create this presentation to encourage you guys to make a positive step forward by adding Indigenous Peoples Day to our district calendar in addition to Columbus Day. 8th grade students began this journey in 7th grade by researching the effects of the clash of the New and the Old Worlds when Columbus landed in the Caribbean. And from this point, they were introduced to the idea of celebrating Indigenous Peoples Day, a movement that has been spreading across our nation since 1992. They were able to form their own opinions about whether or not our middle school should celebrate this holiday. They first started by writing letters to Mr. Pierce and then to Dr. Greenlee as part of this civic action project. So this year, we've continued the civic action project by diving deeper into researching these Indigenous peoples and the cultures of the Americas before and after European colonization. So students are brought back to the question of whether or not Indigenous Peoples Day should be celebrated and if it should be spread across our district. So in groups, students created presentations to support their opinions. From this point, there was a winner from each of my 5 classes. That was based on my scoring and the scoring of their peers. These 5 groups then presented to Mr. Pierce and Dr. Greenlee. And we felt that they all did such a great job that we had to kind of combine them in a hybrid presentation. So without further ado, I present to you this hybrid presentation brought to you by my incredible students, Frederick, Ben, Jose, Ryan, Grace, Raya, Jaylee, Kaylee, Abigail, and Melania. Thank you.
Bring Indigenous Peoples Day to our book. Presented by NDMS 8th grade students Ryan, Sammy, Frederick, Jose, Ben, Kaylee, Abigail, Grace, Jaylee, Raya, Melania, Amelia, and Miss Bowman.
Good evening.
Indigenous Peoples Day is a day to remember and honor. It's a day to respect the lives that were taken, not given, for our land. It was not right and it was not respectable on America's part, but we can change it. Indigenous Day is a day to take a moment to remember everything, no matter how much it hurts, and acknowledge the things others lost and the things we took. That's what Indigenous Peoples Day is, not just a day we slap on the calendar because we feel bad for the neighbors.
Indigenous Peoples Day is a holiday first celebrated in 1992 in Berkeley, California. It is a holiday that people celebrate to support the people that died when Columbus came to the Caribbean and killed the natives, and to make sure their cultures live on. This is not an official holiday for the country, but many states and cities across the country are pushing for it to be recognized. People also celebrate this holiday to remember their ancestors and learn about what they did, and is an opportunity with this holiday to express their emotions about what happened and the histories to our people and to heal and move forward.
Who already celebrates Indigenous Peoples Day? Well, as you could look at the board, that's a lot of names. And and there's more. Now, you're probably thinking, I do not want to sit here and listen to that. Well, you don't have to. What my point is that I'm trying to get across to you is to show you all the places that already celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day and that have taken the step to make change in our communities. And go back to the first slide. As you can see, I have one place bolded, and then on the other side I have 2 more. Those are the 3 places in the state of Illinois that already celebrates Indigenous Peoples Day.
Here is a map where everybody in the U.S. celebrates Indigenous Peoples Day.
Which tribes are indigenous to Illinois? There are many tribes that were indigenous to Illinois. Some of the tribes consisted of the Chippewa, the Fox, the Iowa, the Kickapoo, the Massacoutn, the Pankashaw, the Sauk, the Shawnee, the Way, and the Winnebago. All of these in which had their own unique and complex set of cultures, beliefs, and tradition. The Chippewa, in particular, were known as the Ojibwe Indians. They lived mainly in Illinois, Wisconsin, North Dakota, Ontario, and Michigan. All tribes believed in many different things. The Chippewa believed that the earth was sitting on the back of a giant sea turtle with elephants standing on it, holding up the earth.
That's the picture, and the earth is flat on the elephants, and the elephants are standing on the sea turtles.
What can we learn from their culture? The Chippewa culture can teach us many things. Some of the things we learned about their culture was their value of self-control, bravery, and patience. The Chippewa tribe's members were fierce and brave warriors. They taught their children to respect their elders, never be jealous of what others have, respect nature and the environment, be considerate of others. Aren't these values that should be celebrated? Values that we could all do a little bit more to live by.
European colonization has affected indigenous people in many ways. One way is that a great majority of Indians were stripped of their culture and forced to assimilate into white culture against their will. Another way is that they were removed from their native ancestral lands and that their ancestors had thrived on for hundreds and hundreds of years. The expansion of the U.S. westward only continued the practice of Indian removal, almost wiping out all traces of their once proud presence. Indigenous peoples were painted as primitive savages, but the truth is the exact opposite. Many native tribes could be considered even more civilized than the Europeans and Americans trying to civilize them. This is a video showing that the land the indigenous people lost.
Can you go back? Can you put it back to full screen?
How can we celebrate at the UE? The UE can celebrate by doing an art project on a tribe of their choice. A few ideas could be creating model teepees from popsicle sticks, and dream catchers or headdresses from paper plates, string, beads, and feathers. These students can also learn about what truly happened to the Native Americans, without all the gruesome details. For example, they could learn that our understanding of history can change with new information. And information now leads to the conclusion that Christopher Columbus may not be the hero he is celebrated to be. I think doing art projects and learning a little bit about what truly happened would help them form their own conclusions and choose if they want to celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day. How can we celebrate at the middle school? The middle school can celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day by choosing a local native tribe that they are interested in and creating a slideshow presentation about their culture, history, and the challenges they faced with European exploration and westward expansion. For example, if students were to choose the Nez Perce tribe, they could learn that they were the first tribe to officially meet Americans exploring the West on the Lewis and Clark expedition in 1805.
How we can celebrate at the HS or the high school. Next year at the high school, we can celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day by participating in the Civil Action Project to learn more about the issues facing modern Native tribes. This project will include the research about a certain tribe, their history and challenges they faced with European colonization and American westward expansion, and the effects that are still seen and felt today. Students can compile a presentation to share with the class or even create a website or public service announcement to spread awareness to the school district and community. Students who can go to hold fundraisers or assemblies to try to help correct some of the issues they learn about the Native communities and reservations today. With such a project, students not only get to understand the connections between events throughout history, they can relate to history on a whole new level, as well as make a positive change in our community or our country.
We have a responsibility to help our fellow Americans.
Learn the past, restore the culture, protect the future. What do we want? We want to add Indigenous Peoples Day to our district calendar on October 12th because we need to celebrate the natives who built the continent before we made it our home. We need to restore and respect the dignity Indigenous people once had. We should celebrate by taking time out of the second week of October to learn about the cultures and traditions of the people indigenous to North America. We should learn more about the natives because their people and cultures were here first. They are a significant part of the reason why we are able to survive the harsh conditions of the New World and build our nation. Bringing Indigenous Peoples Day to schools around the United States, starting here, with you, will help the future because these students at these schools are the future. We will be able to learn from America's past mistakes to make the future better, brighter future for all Americans.
Change starts here. Can we count you in? Miigwech, thank you. We Goodbye.
Thank you, guys. Deep breath, you did it. Before you go, though, can I just have, I'm not going to make you say what you learned in school or anything like that today. Could you tell me, let's have each person just say their name down the line.
I'm Kaylee Powell. Jaylee Decker. Grace. Okay. Grace Nielsen.
Jose Soto Rocha.
Miss Bowman.
Awesome job, you guys.
Nice
Thank
job.
you
Thank
very
you,
much
guys.
for coming. So I always give you the option to stick around for the rest of the board meeting. You're always welcome to do that. I've not had many people take us up on that, but you're very welcome to do that. And thank you guys very much.
Thanks for coming out.
You can't leave, Jake.
Thank you.
That's for execution.
So we've got another portion here that I wanted to bring up through the superintendent's report. And I've got Allison here tonight. She's going to talk to us about understanding and how it was figured, the exemplary rating for Capron. And I want to say first off, congratulations to Capron. I know how hard they work at Capron, and not just Capron, all across the district, how hard we work for our kids. Congratulations, guys. It's quite an honor to get. And this year, it's new. So this year, rather than just simply being about how you did on park or anything like that, they've got a growth component in. And we shared it at the November meeting, but Allison and I kind of needed to get a little reaffirmation from the state about how in the heck did they get to this designation. And so at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Allison, and she put some information together about how they got there. So go ahead, Allison.
Go over there.
Wherever you want.
It's all right if I. Actually, I'm very proud about this, so I'm going to stand up. And I'd first like to recognize teaching staff who are here tonight. I'm going to start with the back row. Wanda Grover, Emily Mortimer, newly married, Ashley Hilton, Shannon Harkness, Cindy Mayton, Amy Guthrie, Elizabeth Savely, Sarah Corpin, and of course we have you'll learn her name very soon. She wasn't with us last year, but our new special ed teacher who will be soon, Serena Brett Schneider. I didn't want to mess up the name. All right, Brett Schneider. So a big kudos to them. I'm so proud. I told Mike I'd keep this short. I could go on for hours and hours about how I feel about the staff at Capron because last year I went to them and I said, these are our scores. This is not okay. We need to work on this. What can we do? And they got together, worked very hard. They work hard every year, but it was our goal to make sure that we saw growth in our students. And as you're going to see in this report, that's basically what helped us receive this awesome designation of exemplary. So
a little bit about what a summative designation is. It was basically the state's way of telling residents of the state of Illinois how schools rank when you compare them against each other. There are 4 designations: exemplary, commendable, underperforming, and lowest performing. To be exemplary, a school has no underperforming student demographic groups, at or below the all students group, the lowest 5% of Title I schools, which is what we are, a graduation rate, we're not a high school, so that didn't apply, of greater than 67, and whose performance is in the top 10% of schools statewide. May apply to serve in the Illinois Empowered Network of Partners, so that's something else that I'm referring to the staff if we want to do that. It's a 4-step process. They take our performance data, which includes things like percentage of students proficient, our graduation rate, etc., our growth. They converted it to an indicator score using some crazy rules, some interesting rules, and then they weighted that indicator score to create an index score, and then they compared all of the schools together in the state of Illinois and rank ordered us and set that top 10%, bottom 5%. What did they look at? They looked at, for our elementary school, they looked at our English learners' progress to proficiency, our ELA and math proficiency, the climate survey, chronic absenteeism, and 50% of it was on growth. So the state really is focusing on not solely how many kids are reaching proficiency, but more importantly, are students growing? Are they improving each year? So proficiency targets, this past year, they were looking at about 43% and about 39% in English language arts and math. I'm not going to go through the math on this, but this is just to give you an example of how they decided how to score growth. I did this. I went through our numbers. It was fun. I like math, but I won't bore the crowd with all these calculations.
It takes a little while.
It takes a little while, yes. Scoring rules, chronic absenteeism, they looked at our absenteeism in our school, and again, the weighting formula. So from beginning to end, what did this look like for paper? So we looked at our different areas that they looked at, our proficiency in math and English, language arts, our ELA growth, our math growth, EL progress to proficiency. Now, in order to have a subgroup, you need to have 20 students. We only had 12 in this age group, so we didn't have enough to create that subgroup. So they adjusted the scores appropriately, and they looked at our chronic absenteeism. So our proficiency in ELA was 36% of our students, math was 26. They were to grow. But the key thing I want to point out here is we had 73.62% of our students show growth in English language arts. We had 71.92% of our students show growth in math. As you're going to see here, that exceeded the state's expectations, because when they changed it into an indicator score, notice our ELA growth is 100. They stop at 100. You don't get to go higher. So when they set their rules, the highest score you could get was 100. That's what we got in English language arts for K-9. So these are our indicator scores that, according to formula, we came up with. So very high, 197.61, 98.18, very high. So then they take those and create indicator scores or index score calculations, make the numbers a little bit smaller, and then you add them all up together. All schools across the state received a 5 for the 5 Essentials survey. The state was not confident in the information they were receiving statewide on that 5 Essentials survey. One thing Mike and I learned, so we got an automatic 5 points. And so when you added those all together, we received a total index score of 93.76. This is just a graphic of how they rank ordered by the all-student group to figure out the top 10%. And then the descriptive statistics showing you that the exemplary index score, in order to receive exemplary rating, the cut score was 80.94. What was Capron's? 93.76. right? So, Capron Elementary, long story short, we're pretty awesome. What more can I say? almost 13 points above where the cut score was. If you would like additional information, I went through this presentation very quickly. You can go to the isb.net website. You look under support and accountability and summative designations, and that's where you can find more information if you're curious.
A lot of resources there if you're looking to
Yes.
get detailed into it.
Yes, and I will be looking further into the Illinois Empower, what that means. This is basically supporting other schools around the state.
With
help
school
them
improvement,
reach.
yeah.
Yep, so, that's it. Anyone have any questions?
Good job. Thank you. That's awesome.
Proud.
No, congratulations, you
Thank
guys.
you, everybody.
Well
Nice
earned.
job. Awesome.
Good hard work. You told them they had to stay, right? We gave them-
Absolutely,
Okay.
yeah. Want to keep track of who leaves, and you don't get a donut in the morning.
No. Thank you guys very much. Awesome job. So, and I definitely felt it was worth recognizing. And thank you for coming tonight. Three other real quick items in the superintendent's report. I just wanted to say congratulations to Ashley Boyer and Rob Ulrich. They were selected as finalists for the Golden Apple Teaching Award. Those 5 winners will be announced. There's 20 of them right now. They'll narrow it down to 5. Those will be announced in the spring. Want to thank the Belvedere Women's Club for clothing and school supplies. They brought in several boxes worth of stuff that we distributed to our schools. Also, thanks to Representative Joe Sodnowski for supporting the One Book, One School program at Poplar Grove. And a big thanks to Countryside Market, who walked into Jamie and gave him a $500 check for flexibility to use how he sees fit to go back to kids. So we have been very fortunate this month, and we just wanted to thank all of our supporters. So, and that is what I have for superintendent's report.
Takes us down to committee reports. Policy.
We did not meet, and is there
First of the
anything-
year probably will
Okay.
set a date after Christmas.
Sounds good.
Business Services Committee.
We did not meet, but Melissa's probably going to have 2 meetings coming up. We'll do the insurance in January, talk about the insurance with our insurance committee, and then probably something with business on the backside of that.
Facilities, long range.
No, we haven't met, but we will be meeting after the first of the year also, because our summer projects are right around the corner.
And the curriculum.
We did meet. We went over the CEC audit and pretty much the long-term technology plan, which we'll be going over later today with Mike. So no recommendations at this point.
Brings us to the consent agenda. We have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Motion.
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Kinzer?
Yes.
Mrs. Maxey?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mr. Hazelhurst?
Yes.
Takes us to unfinished business.
Yeah, can I interject one thing?
Oh.
I know when we talked about doing the long-term tech plan and moving that to the very end, I invited 2 people in, and it was more or less to support the backside, and I didn't think of that until midway through the Pledge of Allegiance or wherever we were. I've got Kelly and Eileen here. One of the things that we've had with the 2 resource adoptions through science and through math is kind of an infusion of technology that supports the curriculum. And I thought it was a good spot on the backside of the long-term technology plan to have Eileen and Kelly come and show us some of the stuff that supports the curriculum materials that we brought in. With that going all the way to the bottom, I was wondering if maybe we could have those 2 come up and do their demonstration with what they've been working on or what they have got in the classroom for the kids with technology. Are you okay with that?
Absolutely. They don't want to stay to the end?
That's kind of
To be honest.
We're thinking it.
Yes. Mind reader.
All right, I'm good with it.
So if you 2 would love to, why don't I bring you up right now, let you guys show the board a little bit about what you...
Just take control of the
Usually it's the other way, Kelly kicking me out and taking control. So
It's easier that way, then you can see what the kids see in the classroom.
Yeah.
So when the kids are on, oops, this is full view here. I think it's maybe larger. Okay. What the kids see, theirs is all in yellow, so they have an interactive student edition. They have a student book, and they have student resources. The interactive one is what shows them a quick little video that they get to see for each lesson. It walks them through the explore activities, which are a little bit more group-oriented and a little bit tougher for them to do. And then the student book will show all of that as well, but it just doesn't do directly the interactive. Let me show you.
That's more for like, if we gave an assignment and let's say they forgot their book at home, they could go in there too and they could look at what we've done, get pages from there, maybe they assign something from the book. They have access to that, at home if they want to look something up also. But then there's things on the pages that they can click on to go to different things within the site.
One of the things that I have been using more in my classroom as I've gotten to learn the book, we've had some training on it as well, are the personal math trainers. Today I asked the kids, give me some pros and some cons on about the book that we're using. They honestly, and I asked pros and cons, they didn't tell me any cons. They told me all pros. They love being able to pull up the view example, which shows them exactly how to solve a problem. And then what's great about this, once they do that, they can jot down some notes, they can ask us questions, they can try another. So it gives them at least 2 more examples for them to try on their own after they've seen an example done. Also provides a step-by-step. So if they're like, okay, I think I know a little bit better about what to do, but I just want to get a little bit of a refresher, it'll have them enter things in, they can check it, move to the next step. Again, there's a try another. There's the video tutor, which what I have been doing is after we take a quick quiz on the lesson, I have them watch it's called Math on the Spot. And it is one of the people who have written the book. They walk through the new concepts, so they get a preview for what we're going to be doing the next day, and they love that. I mean, they brought that up. So these are things that I was planning on talking about, and then they are also saying this as well. Then they can go back to the textbook. There are selected answers in there for the kids to go through and check, which is another good thing. So they have the problems that give them an opportunity to work. Mr. Kleck came in and observed me one day when it was during one of my co-taught classes. So Jessica and I were able to walk around the classroom. Kids could work at their own pace. We would go around and take a look. Any questions? They'd raise their hand if they had it. So a kid who's understanding it can work a little bit faster instead of waiting for everybody. Those kids who aren't getting it, we can go with them and walk through a problem individually. They are definitely loving this because it gives them the ability to not have to ask in front of everybody else, but be able to still ask and get some guidance if they need it. I saw some improved math scores from the fall to the winter, and I made changes and, not right away because our training, bits and pieces, we finally learned what is really helpful. Making just a little bit of changes in about a month, I've seen some improvement in the math scores just then. And the confidence the kids have is making a difference as well.
The way that I use the personal math trainer too, and when they go in and they do it as practice. I do give them, and I can go in and edit it, which is really nice. So I can go through and maybe I want to add a little bit more problems that deal with a certain concept, maybe that they need a little bit more practice with. So I can put more of those problems in, take some out that I think, oh, they've got that. They don't need to go through that. They just need more work on that. So they can go through those, and the step-by-step and the examples, they take advantage of that a lot. And they really enjoy that concept being there and for them to use. So they have that, they have all the things that they can click on to go back to the textbook that's going to help them with those. So it's not just us, coming to them and answering their questions. They can use what they have on the website to help them. It's been great, and it's really nice for me because the kids, in 8th grade, they have access to the computers all the time. So that's wonderful. So they always have that. So we can use that every day. They can go online and they can do those, go through the lessons online. They can use those math personal trainers. They can watch the videos. So that aspect is wonderful. And then also, I think for parents, it's much more helpful. Parents can go through it with their kids, and if the kid's not understanding, a parent could go in there and help them with it. There's a lot that would help the parents, help the students too. So it's, the previous math that we had, it was very hard for the parents to help them with. So this is just great, and yeah, the students really do like this, and I think they enjoy using the technology part of it that we use a lot in the classroom lately.
And I do have to say, one of the difficulties for me is the kids don't have in sixth grade one-to-one devices. So I will say, and I have a math intervention class that I'm doing during my study hall time. Come in and see me if you need to use a Chromebook, or we have a few laptops here and there. Come borrow from me if you need to during that time to finish things. I have kids come in on a daily basis. Can I do some more problems? Can I borrow one to use? Yes, you can. So, it would be lovely if every single kid was able to have that, and whatever they didn't finish during class time, they're able to take it and finish during that study hall time. But otherwise, the things, they have higher order thinking problems as well for each of these lessons. And that again, with what we're seeing with testing, trying to go to, it's easier going back and forth with smaller. Here are some of the higher order thinking problems, and those are also on the personal math trainers. So it's going to give those kids, say, okay, you're really getting this. Let's try some challenge problems for you, so that they can see it and they can get some feedback on it. And it guides them through if they need it. They can ask questions if they need it, but it gives them that ability to try something a little tougher instead of just doing all of the things that are easier for them. So and those struggling kids, definitely I see them becoming more confident. They love the fact that they are able to have a little bit of a preview before we do a lesson, because they're like, okay, I think I have this little bit more. So their hands are going up a little bit more during class time, answering questions, asking questions. And that's a big part of being successful, is building that confidence so they can take the risk to be better successful.
And then the word problems too, give them ample practice for like PARC type questions or any standardized testing. If we're going to get away from PARC, it gives them that type of practice also, so they've seen it before they're taking those tests. And then to the assessments that they have on here, they provide different levels for worksheets and assessments. So if you have students working at different pace, you can differentiate with the materials that were given online and also with the worksheets that are provided. The assessments, some will adjust to the performance, so there are some interventions also, and I have in my intervention study hall, I have used the interventions. So it will assign a pre-test to everybody, and then based on that score, it gives them a personal study plan that they will work on, and they're given a time for that, and then after their personal study plan, they're given then a post-test. And you can use that, like we can pick different standards that maybe they're low in, and I use it that way to try to fill in some gaps to things that they're missing. And you go through that pre-test, that study, and then you see in that post-test, you see some growth there that, maybe they're getting that now, and then you can go on to others, and there's different interventions you can use too, which is really nice.
And unfortunately, I haven't been able to do that quite as much because of my lack of one-to-one devices for the kids. So, but doing as much as I can. Lovely.
Yeah. The program is great.
Yes.
And hearing a lot of positive things.
So we're in December. What's been the biggest change for you guys with the resources?
As in me personally, what I'm doing?
Teaching, yeah.
Teaching. It's definitely become, which it should be more student-centered, where I can say, okay, we're taking this class, you guys work on these problems. I get to roam around and help those kids who really need a little more one-on-one. When you have, 25 to 30 kids, you cannot normally reach every single kid, especially, you get those kids who get it done really quick. Is this right? Is this right? They can now see if they're right or not. And I don't have to check their answers. They can check their own. Where those kids who are struggling, they're like, I read through this, I still don't get it. Okay, let's go through. So I can give that attention to those kids who are struggling and not have to worry about those who are ready to move ahead. They can a little bit more on their own. So they're not as reliant upon me as they used to be. Well, I don't get it. Okay, well, let's take a look at the example. Let's walk through. And so it's also having me try to teach them how to use the walkthrough. You know, instead of just saying, just read it. Okay, let's see what's here, what's important, write some things down. Now let's go back to the next example and look at what you did here, look at the numbers that are here, how can we apply it to that? There's, one of the weaknesses I see with kids is them being able to take a problem and do a similar one to it, even if they've just seen it. So having this, and, you know, if you get off the personal math trainer, go back on there again, you have 3 more problems to do. It's not that it says, no more, you're done. You get a chance to do 3 more. So, and they have a variety of problems.
Right, and they change it, which is nice too.
Mhm.
You know, it's not like you're seeing that problem, you gotta, oh, here's the same exact problem, do it again. No, they're giving you different numbers, yep, they're changing it. And I completely agree with everything you said, I've seen that too in the classroom, and the use, I'm seeing that I'm using more technology, you know, that I wasn't using before. So that's a big change, in my classroom. So I didn't use the technology like this with the other math program we had, and having this here has been wonderful. It really has.
Can you teach them all that?
Yeah.
Well, and that's part of it, it changes, you know, it
Right.
changes teaching, and it
Right.
brings change
Yes.
that, which,
Yes.
you know, sometimes you're walking and learning as much as the kids.
Yes.
You know.
And it was nice piloting it last year for a little bit. I think that I felt a little bit more comfortable than going in this year because I had already, you know, seen it and used it a little bit with them. So that helped also. And then just us talking has been very helpful. And, oh, I found this. Oh, you could use it this, you know, just teachers talking and helping each other use it has been great too.
How about student engagement? We all know student engagement is a huge piece.
Well, as I said, when Matt came in to observe, there was 100% engagement.
Definitely, 100%
Yeah.
engagement.
So, I mean, you know, the kids who are struggling don't have to sit there and wait for you to come.
That's what's very nice.
They can read something while you're helping one, you get right over there to them, they can skip it and go on to the next problem. Then we can go back to it. Those kids who move faster can check their answers, they don't have to wait to check them with me. So it's definitely gives a little bit more independence.
Does the board have any questions? Just more a chance. We worked hard to pass this with you guys last year. I wanted you guys to be able to just see kind of what we're implementing in the classroom.
Are they able to access this from home?
Yes.
Yep, there's a link
Yes.
that they can use and access it at home.
Yeah, it's on the website. Yep, school website.
And we have a
Yes.
link that we send to them too, but I think it's easier for them to go through the website.
Yes.
They keep losing the link or they
Yeah.
delete it.
Can you see if the kids have been on at home and how much they've been using it at home?
Well, I did one thing where I created an assignment, I don't know, but I created an assignment and I didn't tell them if they did it, they got an extra credit point. Well, those who did it, they got an extra credit point, and they're like, oh.
But I don't think there's
So
any
throw something out there like that.
Yeah.
And some of them, I said, well, did you try this? I said, oh, yes. So,
I don't know if there's anything where we can actually go in and
Track.
review their time.
unless they submit it.
Right.
And if they're
Then you can see
submitting
how
it
much,
afterwards.
right.
Yeah.
But just to see if they used, you know, like the videos, if they didn't understand it, something like that, I don't think, I guess that's something we would ask them, is training. to
Here.
see.
We'd have to find some sort of timeline for that.
Okay.
But we'll be doing it.
Okay.
Well, thank you guys.
Yeah, thank you guys. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, you're
Joe?
welcome. Thank
Joe?
you so much for approving it, because I
Anything?
tell you,
We love
we are
it.
loving it,
Good.
and the students are loving it as well, so thank you for your
Thank
support
you.
with that.
Joe's here.
Thank you
wanna do
guys
the-
very much. Appreciate it.
Joe's here, do you want to do the technology thing now, or do you want to still wait?
It's up to you guys. We did approve it at the end, but I don't know if we should stick to the agenda or.
Stay there?
No.
Move fast enough.
I might need one. Yes. I'm sorry. Hey, Tom. How are you, Joe? I'm well, how are you?
So we moved long-term technology down to after closed during the approval of the agenda. So I don't know if you guys want to move that back up or if you just want to keep it there.
The IT guy's work is never done, Jerry.
So,
Just let
Let's just, well, let's move it.
Going fast.
We did do an approval on the agenda, and I need to go to the protocol if somebody were to object. I don't think so. But ultimately, you're the president.
Thanks.
Yes, I can check.
It's good if we voted on it, we should obviously. Any other questions about the long-term technology plan?
That
We'll be-
portion.
We'll be revisiting it at the end. Since we already voted on the changing of the agenda, I figured we should just stick with that, but do we need the people to stick around any further?
No, thank you. I think they're gone.
All right, that takes us to online registration. If I
Yes,
have my notes
we
in a row.
brought this to you last month. There was some more information that's been added, and Melissa's added more to the online presentation that I'm going to have her walk through, and I'll kind of add in a little bit about it as we go. We've talked to the representatives there, and we still feel pretty confident and comfortable about trying to move forward with the online registration. So I'll turn it over to Melissa.
Okay. So online registration.
Not working.
Oh, sorry. You'll have to drive. Sorry. Unless Jamie can.
Is the power on? Got to hold it on for a second.
I was holding on just pretty tight
No, I
when I was
know,
doing
I'm
my
sorry.
presentation, I guess.
So our current process, we'll go through that really quick. Right now, we do kindergarten roundup, usually February to March.
Hit buttons. Laser work.
It's jumping on your computer, but it's not jumping up there.
Whose presentation?
There it is.
There it goes.
There it goes.
Is that me controlling it though?
I think somebody else's computer is presenting this. It's awesome when it works.
I'll use the laser.
Thanks. Okay, current process, sorry. Kindergarten roundup is February through May, and that's done in the individual schools. Grades K through 5 right now, we're doing mail-in registration. We've been doing that for a few years, typically end of spring break through May. Grades 6 through 12 register in person in July and August, and then new families also register in that July and August registration time period. Real quick, the fees on the next slide. Maybe. There's like a delay. Our fees went from 130,000 in March of 2008, and we're down to 59,000 as of December 11th. So we're still chipping away at our fees and getting those down. Oh, is it working now?
I think it's just delayed, really slow.
Bless you.
Part of my long-term tech plan will be to straighten out our PowerPoint.
New projector.
New projector.
Right, turn on, turn on.
We picked the right night to have Jerry here.
Yeah.
I know, right? That's why it's broken, because tech's here.
There's our Windows.
See, it's not even showing your screen up on the computer.
Is it on split screen?
It was extended before.
We're losing the crowd. They're leaving.
We might have something there. There we go. Well,
Prints it out. You send it.
We can actually follow along with about that on our screens.
That's true.
Should we have a shot? Oh, I got it. We're driving. Okay.
Okay.
Whew, I'm driving. Okay. Okay. So July and August registration, we kind of tallied up on manpower hours and how much that would cost to run that. The total employee hours for those 2 days in July and August for registration was about 625 hours. And it's about $17,500 to run those 2 registration days. We have about 40 some staff members on staff that day running those days. So that was kind of an estimate of what we got for those July and August registrations. These are just the registration stations. Most of you have probably been through the registration. There's a lot of redundancy, but those are our big 7. There was some other smaller stations around the area. Initial roadblocks that we kind of ran into when we started talking about online registration was proper involvement from all the impacted areas. So is transportation on board? Is nursing on board? Are the principals on board? So all of our stakeholders that take care of registration, like, are we all on board? Broadband access in our area, which I don't think that's going to be an issue, but potentially it may be just internet to access, cost to implement, and then the timeline for implementation. So those were some of our initial concerns when we started the conversations. Some traditional roadblocks that we find with manual registration, missing information. We'll get forms from parents that sometimes we're missing addresses or legibility. We don't know what maybe it's a 6 or an 8, or we're not really quite sure. Lost documents, human error and data entry, and then just time commitment from families. Like them coming in on a summer day to spend a couple hours isn't always the preferred way to spend their time. So why online? Online registration can provide secure information sharing, up-to-date contact information. There's some data security that comes from the web filters and from PowerSchool. We have improved communication between the family and the district. We can get information quicker, especially when we're trying to figure out class sizes. We know as soon as someone starts the enrollment process that they're trying to enroll, even though they haven't officially submitted. So we can get information quicker. And then we can save money on printing and mailing and processing the forms and all that. The online platform for PowerSchool, it's customized forms, workflows, and documents. So we can say to PowerSchool, here's all of the forms that we've always used, upload these or make these happen. Or each of the areas can say, I want to make these tweaks to the forms, this is what we want it to look like. So we can use what we've always used, but just make it online, or we can make some changes as we go. So they're not a standard form base there.
And almost like a database of other forms we could look at too, to
Yes.
see if there's something that's better than what we're currently using.
Yeah, so we don't have to recreate the wheel if we don't want to. We can look at what other people are doing. We can decide what information parents have to input. So maybe every year we ask them to input their phone number, but they don't have to input their address or their name. Or we get to choose what forms have to be auto-filled every year, just so we're making sure that we have correct information. But that will save down that redundancy too. So they're not having to fill out the same information multiple times. We did find out from PowerSchool that it would take about 6 to 8 weeks to implement. So if they started, or to build, so if they started on January 1st, let's say, after we came back from the new year, or from the holiday break, it'd be about 6 to 8 weeks for them to build our platform, and that includes us talking to them about this is what we want the forms to look like, or this is how we want this to roll out, and all of that. Technology needs, the online registration piece is housed on the same server as PowerSchool. It is a virtual machine, and we've kind of discussed, like, is this cloud-based, is this server-based? Jerry, you might be able to answer that a little bit better. A little bit of both, is that kind of?
It's cloud-based, basically the end user, but housed within our servers.
And at this time, we don't believe that there's any major technology purchases that we would need to buy that we don't already have. We may need to buy some kind of a $200 site license or something, maybe a certificate or something, but there's nothing major on the horizon that we feel like we would need to purchase for this. Security.
Just real quick on that, Jerry, do you think, like, if you go back to like when Obamacare or whatever, and they talk about, you have a bunch of people signing up at once and you overload it, do you think that there would be any trouble like those peaks or surges during registration?
Not at all.
Okay.
The piece of damage going back and forth, the servers will help right now.
Security, the district has firewalls in place to protect against hacking, and then Power School also has security in place to protect their program as well. So we kind of have a double thing going on here with the online registration. The implementation plan, this is something that was asked to bring back. We're kind of looking at January through March, Power School would be doing their online platform. This is kind of a tentative timeline based on they're able to produce the material, but during this time, we'll ask each group, so transportation, this is your form, is this what you want it to look like, what changes do we need to make? And we'll go to nursing, and we'll go to all the different areas and make sure that everybody's got what they need for their forms. March, we're going to do training. Power School provides a half a day, it's in the quote, they provide a half a day training online for all of the users on our end, so admin, secretaries.
We really quizzed hard and drilled down hard
Yeah.
about what we should expect from training. Is this something that needs to be an ongoing thing? The representative we talked to, they said most schools are walking out of there in 4 hours, feeling very solid about implementing it and walking forward with it. What they say was one of the easiest apps that they have to use. So.
April, we would phase in online registration based on feedback and information from training. So we may need some flexibility here on what, how that will look, and Mike can speak more to that.
Yeah, and what I want to do is, based on as we walk through that training and knowing, how confident we are with different phases of it, I want to make sure that if we're going to use a progression, we phase it in the right way where there's no chaos to it, and there's good supports for parents and staff and everything, so that we phase it in a successful manner. I don't want it to come back disorganized or shoddy. So I'd love to say we're going to just ramp it all out there, but if I have to do small introductions of each phase to kind of get everybody in and get them assisted, I'm willing to do that too, to make sure it gets off on the right foot, almost like a progression type thing.
July and August, we would have time open in one of our computer labs for families that are having trouble with online registration, don't have computers at home, would still like to come in and see us. So whatever the reason may be, we would have something open that they could come in and still register.
And we do have summer schools that are still open all the way through June up until the first part of July. There would be availability to use computer labs then at that time too.
And there is some potential for overtime, and subs may be used to help with this initial implementation. So we're going to have some time that we're going to need to use for training, making sure all of our forms are correct, and so we're.
And some staffing for summer.
Mm-hmm. Staffing for summer. So those are some of the extras that we're looking at right there. We lost.
One thing I think is key that we should throw in there too is, and not a hijack attempt at all, but I believe, what's the quote, good through December 21st?
Yes.
And if we choose not to do anything and then we want to look into it, Power Schools changing prices, I think, after the first of the year.
Yeah,
So.
that's correct. Are there any questions?
So this quote is good through December 21st.
Online registration?
We're going to be changing like the payment, place that takes payment from us. For
Yes.
us too, right?
Yes, I'm glad you brought that up, and that was in the technology plan part of it too. So right now we use E-rate for our lunch money, E-funds, sorry, E-rate. So we use E-funds for our lunch money. I'm working with other vendors. There's quite a few vendors that do funds that pair with Power Schools, so I'm getting quotes on that. There's one vendor that has a flat fee of $5,000 a year, and no matter how many fees you collect, it's just a flat fee, where some of them are based on how many fees you collect through them and all of that. So January, I will bring back a new fee management that will mesh with our online registration. I'm looking for a one sign-on, so they register and it's part of that process where they would pay their fees, and it would just be in one package where it interfaces with their online registration. They could buy a Spirit Wear shirt, they could pay for prom, they could go in and pay their lunch money. Like, I want them to be able to, whatever we're selling, they can pay for it online. So that's my hope with, and it can be done. There's multiple vendors that can do that with the Power School online registration. So,
yeah. Will there still be people, I don't know to what extent we have people actually collect money? Can coaches collect money? Will this be something that everybody will have access to?
yes, everybody will have access to it. One of the vendors that I really liked so far has the ability where if a parent comes in with cash, the secretaries can go into our online payment registration, mark that they paid cash for the student, and then it gets monitored in there. The perk of having an online registration portal or for fees is that then it's tied to the correct account code. And so it automatically behind the scenes is making our accounting system more accountable and taking that in. So yeah, we can still collect cash, we can still collect checks, but we would just process it in a different way.
Will anybody be allowed to not do that? Have we thought about, like, is it possible for somebody to be?
Like, I don't picture coaches going in to enter
I was
that
just
type of
thinking
stuff.
of an example.
No, and
It's still
typically-
controlled through the offices, and we still gotta
Okay.
watch our,
Yeah.
way
Who's
we
collecting
account
money.
and collect money, yeah.
And right now, the money
extra
usually
guidelines.
flows through secretaries and the administration at the school building anyways. If I have lunch money, it goes to the secretary, she counts it, she tags it, she gives us the receipt. Now it's just gonna be a little bit more online based, so we get the information quicker.
Checks and balances and
Yeah,
accounting principles.
absolutely.
Are there any further questions?
I guess the only thing, I tried watching that video.
Yeah.
Most of it that you sent
It was,
back, it was a long one, but
yeah.
one of the things, you seem to imply that, like, Power School was going to customize forms, or we had they have a library of forms that we could use, or we could bring forms in. I don't know if that's the impression I got watching the video, that, and that's what's included in that professional startup.
Mhm.
Is there a limit, or did they cap the number of hours that they're gonna give you for customizing forms for us, or?
Not that I was aware of.
Not the initial, I
Yeah.
think if we start making changes midway through, then they started to, yeah, put it in effect. It's kind of like you get a one-time crack to update your forms. And the way I understood it is that they'll take the exact forms we use and enter it into the program. But then if midway through the year we want to make changes, was it 1 or 2 changes that they allowed or something?
One time a year, you can update your
One time a
forms.
year.
So, every time.
But
you
not
issue-
unlimited all year long.
Okay.
But it was, there's not a cap on, you can only have 20 forms, or there was no cap on that. So our initial 6 to 8 weeks when they build our platform, we can give them as many forms as we want in our registration system.
Okay.
And then we have to wait for another year.
And that was almost what I took as,
Yeah.
that's what they needed, that 6 to 8 weeks
Yeah.
was to build that.
Okay.
All right, if there are no further questions, there is a recommendation from the superintendent, if anybody has a motion.
I make a motion to approve the online registration as presented.
Motion from Maxie, do we have a second?
A second.
Second from Brian. Case opposed. Any further discussion? Roll call, please, Kelly.
Mrs. Maxey?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mr. Hazelhurst?
Yes.
Mr. Hathaway?
Yes.
Mr. Kinzer?
Yes.
Motion passes. We will have online registrations.
Celebration.
Yes, that's good. Thank you.
Thank you for all the hard work,
Thank you,
folks.
guys.
That brings us to preschool transportation and fees, which is informational.
Yeah, this was something, and I talked to Mr. Mulholland about it, this was something he wanted brought forward, kind of regarding our way that we have some of our preschool parents paying for transportation, and I think what he's looking to do is not, or at least reviewing that policy, that practice. Melissa and I talked about it. She's got some further updates with it. I'll let you go ahead and start there, and then I'll talk a little bit at the end about where we'd like to go with that next.
So as we talked about the last board meeting about the charging parents that didn't qualify for an IEP for preschool transportation, and if that was a practice that we wanted to continue, I had asked if I could survey the parents to find out. My fear was that if we, at this stage of the game, because of our shortage on buses and bus drivers, to make sure that we're staying within what we have, our limits, to see how many parents would take advantage of the preschool transportation if it was offered for free. Currently, we have 28 students that ride in the morning and afternoon routes. Out of those, 11 of those students qualified for free transportation under an IEP, and 17 of those students were paid transportation. So I sent out a survey to parents and said, would you take advantage of this if we gave it for free? I had 26 parents return the surveys. Not all of them had names on them, so I can't for sure give you a number, but I would say between 10 and 12 of those that came back that said yes are not currently taking our transportation, but all 26 parents that did return it said yes, we would take transportation if it was offered for free. So I think that we would get a good response from that, but right now I don't think that we could service an additional 10 or more kids on our routes the way that we're set up right now. So.
And then the other thing we wanted to do is last year we had applied for the grant through the state. The state came back and said we weren't one of the schools that they qualified for the grant. We had just gone through an audit, a pre-K audit, which came back really pretty good. But now that we're not under those grants, what Allison, Melissa, and I, and even Ashley wanted to do is sit down, take a look at our whole pre-K program, because we're not under a bunch of the strict guidelines from the state. And so this might be an opportunity to expand, change, just grow it a little bit. So what we would like to do is to talk about this transportation piece, the whole pre-K thing, and bring this back possibly in January, latest February, and look at the whole pre-K program and have the board approve any changes to the pre-K program. It's a chance for us to kind of do it our way and not have some of the restrictions that the state puts on it. So, but look at it as a whole entire package for pre-K for 20, gosh, that'd be 2019, 2020 already. So, thoughts, comments, discussion? I think Mr. Mulholland just wanted to look at it and say, is this really the best practice for charging parents for transportation for pre-K?
All right, no further questions? All right, thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Mike. That brings us to the streaming meetings issue.
Yes. Just a running item for the board. You can see Jerry has set up a monitor. We are kind of trial by error tonight with some features that we have in-house at pretty minimal cost, where we can start and stop meetings here at the board meeting, so it's not having to be controlled remotely. You'll notice that we have a tri-screen, so that there's 3 different pictures going on, and this is a kind of a inexpensive way for us to try to run it here. If you want individual screenshots where we've got the board in one shot, the screen in another shot, and to keep switching back and forth, now we're probably looking at somebody producing it or somebody manually making those switches. This was our attempt to be able to stream the meetings, but yet really be cost effective, to be able to do it and then have control right here at the district board meeting. So I'll open it up to you guys for discussion, and I know Joe was looking at possibly even streaming committee meetings for people that couldn't be there. It'd be a way to see the information or hear the information of what's being discussed.
So what is the control on this then, or what's?
Now you're out of my league, yeah.
Is there a visual indicator up there that it's not, that the sound is gone, or that the, okay.
I do have something in the works that will alert when the sound is present, or when the lights are.
Kind of like a lit up sign, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Actually, a little sign that says,
Live stream or
Live.
behave.
The screen was the first attempt. It was a Cyber Monday.
And this was me talking to Jerry to say, let's not turn this into a big, huge, expensive production.
It can get really expensive. This is my only sign that some other schools use in the area. Pretty expensive for what it is.
What's the format? Keep it simple.
You could also, I mean, you all have my in front of you. You need to say something private, you can turn them off or shield them.
So I think I'm probably just looking for direction from the board of what they'd like to do with committee meetings then.
Does anybody have a motion to begin streaming all board meetings and committee meetings? And a second. My initial idea was having missed a few of them, and then sometimes we want to rehash things at the meeting because we're not really quite sure what everything was discussed, and I know that can make these meetings rather lengthy.
Or plan on recording committee meetings too and posting those? Is that
motion?
Is that some-
That's posted now, right?
revision?
Yeah, it doesn't have to be live. I
Mhm.
mean, these report these, a lot of people do watch these.
Mhm.
I'm open to anything as long as having missed a couple, I wished I could review the committee meetings in particular.
I think the idea behind it was to promote transparency and
Mhm.
information.
You can fast forward.
I move that we approve the streaming of, or at least the control of board streaming the meetings and streaming committee meetings.
Both live and recorded, or
Both live and archived?
do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
I think the only piece that I would like to see on it is, my concern was about privacy, both, a big portion of it was like when we go into executive session, that the conversations out here, that this then ceases to be a public meeting out here, and I would like, to go forward with some kind of visual representation that the feed is off or the audio is off, so that, you're not 24/7 being recorded, so.
And Jerry, you have that now, right? A little
Yeah, I do.
Android-looking Viking or something. It's a green screen.
I put a screen blocker over it during executive session and then also turn off the mics. And that's something that probably not program children do tonight.
Okay.
Once we call the executive session and start talking about that.
Okay.
And once you walk back in, that's the.
Jerry, I assume the frequency of our meetings, both the board meetings and the committee meetings, that wouldn't be an issue for archiving those as far as the storage. I know we host them on YouTube right now.
YouTube is unlimited. It's free.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor of streaming meetings, both live and archiving them, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same. Motion carries. We will begin to stream meetings then, starting
January.
Can I ask that question?
Mhm.
Just as a point of policy, is that something that we need to articulate in any of our board documents?
I'll look.
And you're good with this, Kelly?
Is there any delay in this, Jerry?
Yes.
Can you adjust it?
Yes.
I think we should raise that delay until we go through the learning curve here.
Where appropriate.
Probably a half hour, huh? No, I mean, they can come to the meeting if it's that important to them, but if Kelly forgets to turn something off and we don't realize it, we don't need everybody watching it instantly. We need to be able to correct that. Look into it and let us know.
panic button or something.
Sneeze button.
Right? Red button that's in the middle of the room.
She'll be the one that would have to do it. How long would that take to do?
Oh, just a second. Again, another really simple thing is maybe a board member would want to look these switches off. Visual indicator, if someone be responsible for.
So when those green lights are on, we know sound is on too.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, that's easy.
Thank you, Jerry. Appreciate it. All right. That motion passed, and that takes us to new business, the December 18, 2018 bills.
It was my turn to review them, went through them, and everything looked fine to me, so I would make a motion to approve the December 2018 bills as presented.
Second.
Motion from Kinzer and a second from Maxey. Roll call vote.
Mr. Boone?
Yes.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mr. Hazelhorst?
Yes.
Mr. Hairley?
Yes.
Mr. Kinzer?
Yes.
Mrs. Maxey?
Yes.
Motion passes. 2018 tax levy is our next item.
Seems like we've been talking about this since May. But no, the tax levy it's our turn to vote on it.
Yep.
I don't know if there's anything you want to add. I don't think we've made any changes.
Nope.
It's been the same since the business meeting in November,
Yep.
the presentation in November, and now the same tonight, so.
This is option 4 that we talked about, where we're balloon levying, we're including the CPI in that levy. We are abating the $900,000, and that will be coming later in the resolution towards the end of the board meeting. Yeah, so, and then after you guys, after this is approved tonight, I will be taking the levy to the county clerk office this week, and then I will also be filing that grant that we talked about as part of that option 4 to see if we can get some abatement money back from the state. So as soon as we get back that, but that will also be in the works this week too. So. Any questions on the levy or anything you want me to go back over again?
Did we end up putting this in the paper then?
Yes, it was in the paper. The PowerPoint that I did was also online on our website. So.
We have a motion and second for the 2018 tax levy.
I make a motion to approve the 2018 tax levy as presented.
Motion by Maxey.
I'll second.
Second by Hazelhurst. Roll call please, Kelly.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mr. Hazelhorst?
Yes.
Mr. Hairley?
Yes.
Mr. Kinzer?
Yes.
Mrs. Maxey?
Yes.
Mr. Boone?
Yes.
Motion passes. Brings us to item D, acceptance of 2017-2018 audit report.
Yes, we are bringing the audit report tonight for the board to approve. We've got to get that done. We did not have them come and speak to you tonight. I was going to have Melissa do the summary. If you choose to, we could have that done in January. It is an extra fee to be able to do it, but I thought that if we put it in your packet and Melissa gave you a summary of what they said and how we're taking care of things, that we would move forward with that tonight. So I'll turn it back over to Melissa.
So we're going to ask for you guys to approve the audit report that came back from Gordon's, and this was our first year with this audit firm. We established a very nice relationship with them. It worked really well. They were here in October, August kind of through October, back and forth.
Youngest guys I think I've ever seen in my life.
Yes.
Doing all-
Who loved Edwards Donuts. It was great. So one of the things that, and I'm just going to do some really broad highlights. If you guys have questions or if you want more information later, I'd be happy to dig deeper into this, but I'm just kind of doing a broad overview here. Our AFR is part of this audit report that gets posted on our website. That also gets turned into ISB and the ROE, so they already have copies of the AFR. And the AFR is our annual financial report. So this is our audited numbers of where we've spent money, what the revenues, expenditures, all of that. Part of the AFR, and what I think is what is really important, is our financial score as a district. Out of 4 points, we're at a 3.8. So we've got the recognition, we're at recognition status. And so ISB gives the status based on your financial status. And so recognition is the highest category of financial strength. The districts require little or no involvement from ISB unless we ask them to. So I thought that was a great standing to have. That's something that we've had before. And so there was a lot of hard work done before I got here to get there. Some of the things I look at for that is our fund balance to revenue ratio, as well as our expenditure to revenue ratio, daily cash on hand, and the percentage of short-term borrowing. We're all 4s. The only area that brought us down is our long-term debt, which we know we have, and we're working on abating taxes or abating bonds. So that was the only thing that brought us down to that 3.8. Another thing, and in the AFR and in your packet, you'll see lots of times where they list out all of our fund balances, what's in all of our accounts. I won't read all these numbers to you because that looks like it's kind of tedious, but it's all in here if you guys want to look or if you have questions about that. They did not identify any deficiencies in our internal controls. I'm thankful to have 3 people on our business staff and then in the office so that we can checks and balances, and so that's working well. A few things that they said that we could work on is our fixed assets, so a list of all those capital things that we have and when we sell them and when we buy them. So that's something that we will work on. Activity accounts from the schools, we're going to put some different controls in place for those activity accounts and how it's going to get monitored here and then how things are going to be done at the schools. Cash received at athletic events was another area that they thought we should review and put some tighter controls in for there. And then just our purchase order process. Sometimes things are purchased and then the purchase orders are made, and so we just have to work on that process as well. Those are not findings, those were just things of like, hey, heads up, I think that you guys could do better at that. The only two findings that we had, one was the treasurer's bond, which we fixed last month. You have to have 25% of your whole fund balance in a treasurer's bond, and there was 1 month that we dipped below and we didn't make it. And so there was a finding, but we've raised that up, and so that won't be a problem this year. And the other finding that they had to report was that in our expenditure, or for our grant, some of our expenditures weren't labeled in enough detail, essentially. So I'm going to go back and redo some of those codes so that there's a little bit more depth, and that's just for state reporting. They just need more information there. So really overall, they were happy with what was going on. They said we were good, good fund balances, strong fund balances, and good recognition there. So any questions or anything else I can provide for you guys on that?
Melissa, since we just talked about this,
Mhm.
might athletic events and credit card purchases, might that become something where people will be sitting at a screen and it can all be sort of tallied in?
It
also?
could. Sometimes with athletic events, some schools will do tickets. And so I'll tape a ticket here, and then everybody that comes in gets a ticket, and so we track that way. Tally marks is another way to do it. We could do it virtually with an iPad, tapping people that come in. And so any kind of system like that, we could easily put into place. And so I'll be working with the schools on how that will best laid out. So.
So any other
Yeah.
questions?
Of those four items, I
Mhm.
know the fixed assets, I think has been, I think it's there as a finding
Yes.
going back years.
Mhm.
Is there, in that one, so I get the sense that there really isn't historically within a school district, and that there's not a need felt to track the fixed assets. Is that?
And part of that is with GASB and some of the accounting stuff that's happened, the laws have changed, and so now they have different requirements for the fixed assets. The school districts, though, are a little bit slower to catch up, and that's just kind of a universal thing. There are some agencies or some organizations that will come in essentially almost at night and tag all of your fixed assets and create an inventory, and then give it a little bit more structure to it. I'm going to work with the auditors and say what is a good system that you're looking for, like how can we do this in a productive manner. But you're right, over the years there has not been, fixed assets has kind of fallen by the wayside for many reasons, and so we're just trying to start.
I want to say when I walked into, weren't they talking about a tech inventory?
Mhm.
And didn't we go through and did a
Yes.
huge tech inventory one
Yes,
summer too?
in tech I had all the tech stuff, but it's some of the other stuff in the district that just there wasn't an
Yes.
inventory for. So that's something that
Viable.
I may potentially be bringing back to you guys of if I need anything else, but I'm going to try and start as low key as I possible with an Excel spreadsheet and how can we get our arms around this to meet the auditor's requirements.
What's the dollar limit or dollar amount they put on that?
For
Fixed assets.
Fixed assets. Well, usually capital outlay is I'd have to look. It would be the capital outlay threshold.
Okay.
It's in our board policy. I apologize. It's at the tip of my tongue right now.
Okay.
But it's whatever that capital outlay is set by the district, and then usually it's things over that. It's usually our buses and some other things that if they were gone that you'd be missing. Our buildings are one. Some of that stuff that we do have records for, but then there was also that period of time where we're missing some stuff too. So.
Are you at least doing new purchases now?
Yes.
or
Yes.
We are doing.
Yeah.
And I guess the other one I was wondering about was the athletic events.
Mhm.
I thought that that's been talked about. Maybe it wasn't in last year's. Do you recall if it was in last year's audit?
I don't remember seeing it. And I talked to all the schools and what are you guys doing for the athletic events? And they're not implementing it. So I don't know if it's been in the past but it just didn't get carried over, but it's not being implemented. Yeah.
during my time at North Boone, we've never tracked.
The reason I wonder about it is because when Lyons was doing some of the ticket taking, I was involved in that. I thought we had talked about it back then, you know, everything from, how do you know, like you said, the number of tickets, as well as what was the procedure for doing deposits? You know, do you require 2 people to do it and things like that?
Yeah.
And I,
Two people, so that's when it changed up, 2 people, you know, at every gate, you know, handling money. That was something that did come out of that audit, but as far as counting participants who come in,
Okay.
it's never.
okay.
All of these things will get
Not during my
fixed.
time, not during my 13 years.
I just thought we had the discussion once before, I just didn't, but it may have went back a few years, and I thought, I just was kind of surprised to see it, or that there wasn't something in those.
Yeah,
Okay.
but we'll get all those things squared away for sure. Any other questions?
No further questions, we have a motion to accept the 2017-2018 audit report.
Make a motion to approve the 2017-2018 audit report as presented.
Motion by Maxey, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Kinsler. Roll call, please, Kelly.
Mr. Hazelworth?
Yes.
Mr. Haverly?
Yes.
Mr. Kinzer?
Yes.
Mrs. Maxey?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Motion passes. That takes us to item D, retention of special education board attorney.
Yeah, Kathy Vanderbrook is currently our attorney that we've been working with the last several years. She's phenomenal, does an outstanding job. She just left Hinshaw and has joined Franzik, and is it Rattlet? I'm always worried I butcher that name. But with her new firm, her rate will go from $250 to $275. And it's one where I'm just letting the board know that the rate's changed. I'm still recommending that we still use the same special ed attorney. She knows us. Her rate is well within reason for most attorneys. So I'd look for the board to approve staying with Kathy Vanderbrook at the new rate.
Any discussion? We have a motion and a second.
I'll make a motion to approve the retention of current board special education.
Okay, we have a motion by Mary.
Second.
Second by Mr. Moon. Roll call, please, Kelly.
Mr. Haverly?
Yes.
Mr. Kinzer?
Yes.
Mrs. Maxey?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mr. Hazelworth?
Yes.
Moving on, motion passes. Addition of a part-time nurse. is our
Oh,
next
this
agenda
one's
item.
Mr. Pierce. So, no, I'm just kidding. We have had we've got a large number of students, and poor Mrs. Brosnan is running crazy back and forth between our upper elementary and our middle school. So we are recommending, just based on the sheer number of students, cases, health needs, that we add a 5.75 nurse for our middle campus up here. But we'd stagger the shift so that we've got coverage for the full day. Capron also does not have a nurse late in the afternoon. We may work on scheduling to help share the nurse with Capron as well. So 5.75, and again, it's really to help with the numerous students we've got and a lot of the health just needs that we have of our students. So grow some nursing time is what we're recommending.
Is there a motion to approve the addition of a part-time nurse?
I make a motion to approve the addition of a part-time nurse.
Motion by Moon,
I'll second.
second by Mr. Forst. Any discussion?
I just had one question on the fact that you put in here. It said each school has around 25 to 30 students that see a nurse per day, or
Oh, yeah.
throughout the day.
I'll let Jamie and Julie speak to that.
That number seems, if that's 30 students per building, and you have, so every 10 days, you're almost seeing the entire student body?
Well, I mean, if you
That
look at
was-
the numbers that way, yes, but it's, I would say 25% of the students take up 100% of our time. We have a lot of frequent flyers. We've tried to do little things to help implement you know, if it's cough drops or Band-Aids in the classrooms.
Lot of
Yeah, no.
Medications too, a lot of
Correct.
students with medications.
We have students that need medication first thing in the morning. Lunchtime, it's crazy. Lunchtime is our busiest time, not only for meds for the students, insulin for our diabetics, injuries at recess. I mean, you name it, we got it, that lunchtime period. So yeah, no, it's 25 to 30, I would say, and Julie, you can correct me, that's a good day, 25 to 30. And especially this time of year, I mean, we had, not to go too icky, but we had 2 students throw up in the office today. But if she's, not at the same time, but very similar, we had a 911 call at the UE for a student that ate a peanut that had an allergic reaction, and we had to administer an EpiPen and call 911. That is just, I mean, now that's the exception, not the rule. We don't have 911 calls every day, but that is just one of those things where, you know, I was in a meeting, I had to get pulled out to help her with the student that was throwing up, but then getting over to the ambulance when they showed up. Having that second pair of hands and that support there, 1, would increase that instructional time, but 2, will get these kids out of the office. Some of the concerns that the students come down are legit. There are some kids, like I said, that try to dodge the class thing, unfortunately, and we're working on that as well. But, I mean, Julie, anything to add on that?
The other thing that I noticed just through our conversations, and haven't been a principal for forever, the sheer number of students that need medications or daily health assistance in some form has really grown. You know, it's changed. The world has changed a little bit.
And that's,
Where you're getting at, yeah.
married to a school nurse, I understand the part about the complicated cases and how some students may drive that. And that part I get, and, you know, whatever the explanation, it just, that number seemed like it's not something you're gonna solve with a nurse having 25 to 30 kids coming down. That almost seems more like like you said, cutting down the frequent flyers.
Sure.
Something more in that piece of it.
And I'm with you 100%, Tom, and that's why we're trying to implement those things. But one thing that will help is that, you know, when we say that 25 to 30 at each school, I mean, if Julie had a nickel for every time during the day there was an emergency or a crisis at the other school, we'd have a lot of nickels. And it's just that coverage at both places that, you know, the kid that is throwing up is sitting there in the nurse's office alone, or with Matt and I, throwing up into a garbage can, but she can't get over there because of X at the other school. And that happens kind of frequently.
Don't forget about Jamie back there too.
Yeah. Today I was in the middle school.
I'd be giving Matt that straw.
Yeah. Good call.
I guess just a couple quick questions then is, what's the budget impact for this for part-time, and would this be reevaluated? Is this like a position permanent going forward into next year?
Both good questions. And Melissa and I actually stared at this earlier in the year. And we talked about it. We'd already kind of budgeted with this impact in there.
Okay.
Because of our concern. I had said this summer to my principals and stuff, we're real close at a tipping point. And I think right now this helps. It wasn't one where I just grow hours. This is one where I need another body, another person to help. But I think that we probably, maybe even walking into next year, maybe need to step back and say, how does the coverage look in every one of our buildings based on some of our special ed class increases, some of our just healthy needs that we're needing. So this might be the start of more conversation down the line. But for now, this really hits the needs we're seeing for this year.
Any further discussion, folks? We do have a motion by Boone and a second by Hazel Horse. If there's no further questions, we can have roll call, please, Kelly.
Mr. Kinzer?
Yes.
Mrs. Maxey?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mr. Hazelhurst?
Yes.
Mr. Haverly?
Yes. Motion passes. That brings us to item F, approval of the curriculum guide.
Yes, we presented this to the curriculum committee. Mr. Huber is here to go through a summary of recommendations. For the most part, it's a lot of editing and tweaking and just kind of updating where we're at with it's just some of the natural progressions that have taken place. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Huber at this point.
Big changes were when you talk about testing, the state test is SAT, there were even some parts over there changed, saying that ACT was gonna go away in 2014, it was. So we got rid of all those and cleaned that aspect of it up. We ended up, there was redundancy at the beginning. We did have one of the English teachers who went through it last year for grammatical errors, and so a lot of those had already been fixed. But the redundancy, for some reason, wasn't caught, so we had, basically you saw the stuff that you crossed out at the beginning with more or less repeat than just 2 pages later. And the last thing is to actually take the freshman seminar back out. So this is our 3rd year of trying it. First year, we had some pretty good luck with the class as far as tracking like student success. We've had some. One of the things we're recognizing is our students who come into the high school, and I've talked to the principals at the Big Northern. I've reached out to a couple other principals I know outside of Big Northern who have tried a freshman seminar. Most students who are coming into high school are just trying to pretty much adapt to the high school. They're not ready to start actually at that point in time doing future planning. Trying to do some career stuff as much as we want them to, focus at that point in time what courses they need to take specifically to high school in order to be successful towards something, something like they like to do. Statistics show that students in college are changing their majors at 3 times. So, your students in high school, we want them to have some type of future focus. I think it's unrealistic to ask them to do that as freshmen. The research is also saying as far as the study skills and some of the social emotional skills we're trying to get across to our students ought to be things that are really happening in some of the younger grades. At this point in time, we're putting students through it and trying to expose them to tools we noticed they weren't using consistently throughout high school as far as career cruising to help them track what they'd like to do in the future. And they weren't using it, they were using it then the freshman year and getting exposed to it, but then they weren't really using it consistently beyond that. Even though the counselors are meeting with them twice a year and have access to it and they're able to see what the students did. In some of those meetings our counselors are having with the students are talking about, yeah, I did that my freshman year, and I don't have a lot of time. They're not taking the time on their own.
We also are seeing just a big shift with the school districts in Boone and Winnebago County pushing the career stuff back to sophomore years, just not hitting it in the freshman. There's enough other stuff going on that they need to focus on.
So
that
the recommendation
path looks
is at this point in time, not seeing the success we'd like to over time with freshman seminar. Maybe it's something we're going to look at in the future as far as doing maybe like a career and possibly SAT class junior year for students. It's not implemented for the next year, but just like really in review of freshman seminar class itself, we aren't seeing the consistent success with it, and success over time with students going back to revisit some of those tools they've been exposed to their freshman year. We talked about ways possibly to do that if we could do that better, like your freshman and sophomore year, or your sophomore and junior years, and keep that in place as freshmen. And we just kind of really felt like a career focus would be better more towards junior year. And of course, I keep control any of the social emotional stuff or study skill stuff being down lower, but I keep control what's going on in high school. So just to get rid of the freshman seminar class, it would also allow students another some flexibility on what they'd like to choose as far as what this goes. To start to actually dabble in and just some of what we have to offer for the students. There's some other classes that we've talked about implementing as well. Something where maybe students are exposed to week-long projects in different strands that have been identified through like the ESSA Act, you know, that we're all, was in, you know, began this past summer. That's something that we're looking at going forward, but we're just not seeing the great results we'd like to with freshmen in some of the classes. So mix that at this point and we start to work towards something we feel would better serve our students. That's one of the biggest complaints I hear about freshmen coming in is they don't have a lot of choice their freshman year. There's only one semester-long elective that they typically get a choice of taking, you know, their freshman year. So it would allow like flexibility.
Questions on the curriculum guide and the proposed changes? One thing I do want to add is Kelly last year too went through, because we had a lot of cut and pastes over the year. She went through and spent several hours reformatting to make sure everything blended and matched too. So she took, not only our English teachers, Kelly spent several hours kind of reforming this thing too. So thank you, Kelly.
We have a motion and a second to approve the curriculum guide for 2019-2020.
I make a motion to approve the curriculum guide for 2019-2020.
Have a motion.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion, folks? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Maxey?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mr. Hazelworth?
Yes.
Mr. Haverly?
Yes.
Mr. Kinzer?
Yes.
Motion passes. Which brings us to the PMA investments.
Melissa put together an informational on the PMA investments. This originally started with Mr. Mulholland because I think he saw one of our bonds had matured. And Melissa just kind of overall gave an informational about how that process works and kind of what he was talking about. And I think Mr. Mulholland said it was just information that he'd like to see brought back forward at a business committee so that the board's aware of the bonds. So I'll turn it over to Melissa.
So this is just kind of a overview of our investments in the district. We talk about fund balances all the time and investments, and so I just want to give you guys kind of and this is when we were talking about transportation purchases and we talked about those Alton bonds, and then questions came up about that, and so I just kind of wanted to give an overview for you guys. So if you have questions along the way, feel free to let me know, but this is just informational tonight. Currently, we are investing with PMA. That's who we've been investing with for a while. So when we refer to PMA, that's our investments. Sorry, this is really hard to see, but ISD LAF Plus, I know that's a mouthful, but it's the Illinois School District. It's basically like I don't want to say it's a cooperative, but they don't call it a cooperative, of like all of our professional organizations that went together and created this group that it has different funds in it, and so like it's like when you purchase it, you can invest in this group, and it's safe. So it's covering all of our state statutes. It has all the best interests. It's other school districts investing in. So when we talk about some of our investments and we invest in this group, it has a bunch of, and I'll go to the next slide because it might be illustrated. So this is the profile. So when you invest in something, there's those profiles. This is the profile of ISD LAF. So when you're looking at some of our PMA worksheets that come in your treasurer's packet, you may see that acronym. That's what it is. It's almost like a cooperative that we do some of our investment in. It's a little, it's
Probably
safer.
best practices in
Yes,
funding too.
absolutely. The superintendent's organization involved, the business managers organization, like all those organizations came together to create this, so it met our school district needs. And so there's lots of school districts that are involved in this. And there are portfolios up here if you're interested in that. The benefits with PMA investing, they're ensuring that our liabilities are funded, and we'll get into that in a little bit, maximize our interest, take advantage of economies of scale. So what they can do on a daily basis is not something that I could do at a business office. Like I wouldn't have the time to sit and look at all the investments and where we should throw our money. Like that's what their cup of tea is. That's what they're supposed to be doing. And they can do it on a much bigger scale than what we could do here. We also, just kind of a side note, we do have a policy on investments with our board, with our school board. I sent them that, they sent it to their risk team to make sure that all of our investments were following our board policy, and we are in compliance. So they said that because our board policy is following pretty much the state statute for investments for school districts, that they're in line with what we're saying you should be doing. So that's been taken care of. This is what you guys see in your treasurer's report every month, is this PMA accounts. And you can see, this is just the outline of it, and I'll go in more detail here in just a second, but that's what that balance sheet looks like for our PMA accounts. Our general fund for PMA is all of our money tied to education, O&M, debt, transportation, IMRF. And I highlighted them here, that you can see in PMA, the only thing that's ever usually deposited in PMA is our Boone County sales tax. So the levy that we just passed, that $9 million plus, when we get our tax money in, it's deposited into PMA because it's such a large amount of money. Then they can take that money and then they can invest it as they see fit. So that's kind of where all of that tax money goes, is into our PMA account. And you can see all of those with the red arrow are all of our accounts that are in our general fund there. Our general fund interests from these accounts is divided among, so every month we get a statement, just like you guys do at home with your bank accounts, and it says you earn this much interest. I go through and create a formula and divide it up among all of our accounts. And like I said, the balances are provided monthly. This is just a cash flow. What PMA does at the beginning of the year is they know when our payroll's due, they know when our accounts payables are due, and they kind of have a trend over the years of what is typical. So, you know, our payroll may run, let's say, $300,000. So they know on this Friday that they may have to have a maturity come due of $300,000 to cover that payroll for us. And so that's kind of how the money flows from PMA, and that's why maturities are due when they are, because they know when things are due, and so they have this like year-long look at something's coming up, we better make sure that we have money available for the school district if they need it. And so they do these short-term, long-term investments to make sure that our cash flow, that we have money for those things. So you can kind of see up here that deep blue on the bottom is all of our long-term investments, and then it kind of goes short-term and then the liquid. So I won't go too much into this, but just kind of an idea of why when maturities are due, it's because there's usually something due on our district side to cover and pay for that. This is the interest sheet, just so you guys kind of have an idea of how that's broken down by fund. Maturities in the general fund flow with the cash flow, like I had talked about. Typically, what happens is we have accounts with the Grove State Bank that is like our everyday checkbooks. When we need money in there, that's when we have our maturities, and we transfer from our PMA over into our normal checkbooks to cover those payrolls and stuff like that. So that's kind of the big picture of that. For our maturities. If maturities aren't needed in the general fund, then they can sit there or they get reinvested for another payroll or another thing that's coming up. So, the facility tax account, we have 3 accounts with PMA. This one is where that initial sales tax money came in. Right now that's getting into the capital funds, but the sales tax money does capital projects like our summer projects sometimes, and it also works with tax abatements. We've used some of it for the tax abatements as well. And you can see that on our line there. There's just the one fund there. I think right now there's about $650,000 in there. The other one is the capital development bond. This was that money. It was about $12 million or $13 million that we got a few years ago. The board voted to use this money towards tax abatements. And so essentially the money is sitting invested basically long-term. And then every December or so, maturities come up to pay for our bond payments that are due in January. So I think December 1st, we just had one come up for our bond payments due. And right now it's at about $13.4 million or so in that fund. And that's where the Alton bond was in that capital development fund. And so that's where that was sold and then reinvested there. Maturities in the capital development are based upon our abatement schedule. Since you guys already have listed that out long-term, PMA is using that to say, okay, we need this maturity due here so that we can fund those abatements later. We have long-range investments, which have higher interest rates, and then we have short-term investments also with them who have lower interest rates. And so you can see some of those there, like Max, Liquid, the SAD, the savings deposit accounts are all our short-term investments. I just put the interest rates up there. Those were as of 12/11. Those are constantly shifting, as you guys know. So we are seeing interest rates going up, which is good for our interest accounts there. Any questions on that? That is like top level. PMA did say that if you guys wanted more information, that they would come to a business committee meeting or a board meeting also and give more information if you needed it. So, any questions?
So the only part that I missed first of all, I thought this was a very good presentation. There was pieces in here. I wasn't quite sure how you did the cash flow and, you know, when you had the fund balances. But the part that I still think I'm missing is that the capital development money, I thought that that money was invested by PMA in specific certificates of deposits that had maturities out when the abatements were coming.
Yes.
And that's what I'm still not exactly seeing on this, because these three rates look like they're just generic funds that the money goes in, and it's not like, you know, when 700,000 that needs to come in for next year, or this 900,000, I didn't believe was coming out of one of these money market accounts or one of these funds. I thought it was money that was individually invested for this district in a specific investment. And that's, I still think there's something I'm not seeing.
Yeah, and the interest rates that I've listed here, those are mostly for our general account. So a lot of our cash flow and our money is moving out of our general account, and that's like O&M, education fund, all of that. Our CDB, or our capital development fund for the abatements, most of those are, like you said, in either the long range investments where they know in 5 years it's going to come mature.
And that specifically was what I thought we were looking for, is what were those capital development bond funds, what were they invested in, interest rates, maturity dates, and things like that.
Yeah, and I can send you November's statement, and on the back couple pages it lists all of the maturities and the maturity dates and where it was in. So I will email that to the board so you guys have that. I'll also start making sure that they're put into your treasurer's report packet so that you guys have them, and you can look on the back page and see like when are they due. And most of the time when they're due for a reason, and if we don't need it, then we leave it there because there's just more interest rate with PMA than if we transfer it to Papa Grove and it sat there. Like, we just don't get the interest rate. So that's part of it, is making sure that we have enough but not too much there. So does that help?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions I can answer? Yeah.
This was just informational,
Yep.
so there's no vote. Melissa, again,
Thank you
fantastic
very much.
job. You're making this
Good job.
perfectly clear to
Thank
not
you.
only us, but anybody who takes the time to look at these attachments on the agenda, so we greatly appreciate that. All right, that takes us to agenda item H, resolutions of abating taxes.
Yeah, H and I are both just extensions kind of the levy, both pieces that went in place with what we did with the levy earlier, so. I believe, is it Mary that reads?
It is. Do I just do what's in blue or the whole thing?
Just, I think what's in blue.
What's in blue. Okay, make a motion for a resolution abating a portion of the tax heretofore levied for the year 2018 to pay debt service on $9,292,272.20 capital appreciation school bonds, Series 2003, of the Community Unit School District Number 200, Boone and Winnebago Counties, Illinois.
Thank you, Mary. We have a motion from Maxie. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Kinzer. Any discussion? Hearing none, can we have roll call, please, Kelly?
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mr. Hazelhurst?
Yes.
Mr. Haverly?
Yes.
Mr. Kinzer?
Yes.
Mrs. Maxey?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Okay, and I make a motion for the resolution abating the tax heretofore levied for the year 2018 to pay debt service on general obligation refunding bonds, alternate revenue source, Series 2016, of Community Unit School District Number 200, Boone and Winnebago Counties, Illinois.
We have a motion from Maxie. Do we have a second?
A second.
And a second from Moon. Any discussion? Roll call, please, Kelly.
Mr. Hazelhurst?
Yes.
Mr. Haverly?
Yes.
Mr. Kinzer?
Yes.
Mrs. Maxey?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes. All right, motion passes. That brings us to executive session. We need a motion to go into executive session to discuss the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body or legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee of the public body or against legal counsel for the public body to determine its validity, as well as collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees, as well as the placement of individual students in special education programs and other matters relating to individual students. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
A motion by Maxie.
Second.
And a second by Hazel Horse. Any discussion? Roll call, please, Kelly.
Mr. Beverly?
Yes.
Mr. Kinzer?
Yes.
Mrs. Maxey?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mr. Hazelworth?
Yes.
All right. Go into executive session.
Yes.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, thank you. I felt better. I'm just glad I made it through the semester.
How was the concert?
That was a Oh, yeah, we can.
We could, no, there's nothing pressing at all. We could do it.
We're
We
not
could do it.
voting on it, or?
Yeah, I hope there's enough to go around.
Yeah, I could do.
Well, I'll pick through the good
I'll
ones.
I
just,
mean, we're
there you
after
go. Just
nine.
keep it in your
I think
office.
it's-
Give it out when they
And I
come.
think January.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
It's a good idea.
For the tech, are you looking to move and be ready for next year with your plan or your?
Yeah, kind of what I would do is ramp that out as a broad concept to make sure that the board is accepting the concept, but we wouldn't look to pass it until April when we look at, that stuff, or purchasing.
Do we have a motion to leave executive session?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion by Maxie and a second by Moon. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. That moves us on to, oh no, got a couple.
Motions from
Motions.
executive.
Out of
I
executive
make a
session.
motion to approve out-of-district tuition fees for students 2019 1 and 2.
Have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion by Maxie and a second by Rudy. That was roll call. We should do
Just,
that.
Yeah, to
what
do
was
that.
the student numbers again?
It was for students number 1 and number 2 for 2019.
Anonymous numbering process. Fiscal year 2019,
Okay.
1, 2.
Roll call, please, Kelly.
Mr. Kinzer?
Yes.
Mrs. Maxey?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mr. Hazelworth?
Yes.
Mr. Beverly?
Yes. Motion passes.
Okay, and I have a motion to approve up to 30 sick bank days for Ophelia Lee, contributed from NBES district employees for the remainder of the 2018-19 school year.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion by Maxie and a second by Moon. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Maxey?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mr. Hazelworth?
Yes.
Mr. Beverly? Mr. Kinzer?
Yes.
Motion passes. That brings us to the technology plan. Do we have a new motion? Or a motion about the technology plan?
I'd like to move we table that agenda item until the January meeting of the board.
Second.
Third.
Any discussion? I can read all in favor?
Aye.
Yeah, you.
All opposed? Motion passes. We will discuss that at the January
Jerry's not
meeting.
feeling the love.